Parker Schnabel and Tony Beets are the stars of Discovery's #1 show, Gold Rush, which is back for season 9. This season will be unlike any other, featuring new miners and rivalries as the crews mine for gold. Let's take a look at a clip.
Parker Schnabel is no stranger to the wild world of gold mining. Born into a family of miners, with his grandpa, the legendary Big John, showing him the ropes, Parker seemed destined for greatness. From the time he was 16, he's been chasing his dream of running his own successful gold mining company. And for 14 seasons on the Gold Rush TV show, we've watched him rise to the challenge, battling tough competitors, harsh weather, and the ups and downs of the mining life. But when Parker's not around, things can get tricky for his crew. Without him there to lead, problems pop up that could stop the team from hitting their weekly goals. That's where Mitch Blaschke, Parker's foreman, steps in. Mitch knows how important it is to keep things running smoothly. After all, he doesn't want to risk getting fired by the young gold mining boss. Take one time, for example, when Parker had to leave the team to check out a promising mining claim near the Indian River. Before heading out, he swung by the site to meet Mitch and make sure everything was set, especially the wash plant, the big machine that sifts gold from dirt. Parker had a lot on his mind. We've got to get 2 plants up and running. This is a huge move for us this year. I'm heading to Fairbanks, so I won't be here. You good with everything? Luckily, Mitch had it under control, and Parker could breathe a little easier. Losing key team members is a real worry for Parker, though. He's seen it all. Competitors who can barely scrape together enough cash for a plane or a gold mine, and probably shouldn't have either. Brutal weather, and the constant pressure to keep his company thriving. Every challenge tests him, but it's all part of his journey to build the gold mining empire he's always dreamed of. Mitch gave Parker the good news before he left. Everything's running like a dream. Both wash plants are humming along. Nothing to worry about here. With 2 machines, Lucifer and Big Red, cranking away, it seemed like smooth sailing ahead. The crew was in good hands, and Parker could head off to Fairbanks to seal the deal on that Indian River claim without a hitch. But, as luck would have it, the second Parker was out of sight, trouble hit. One of the wash plants broke down, like it was waiting for the boss to leave just to mess with Mitch. You can almost picture Mitch standing there, staring at the busted machine, his mind racing. How much is this going to cost? How long will it take to fix? Is this going to ruin Parker's goals for the season? Why did I tell him everything would be fine? Mitch's job was to keep the crew digging day and night, chasing that gold to hit their targets. With summer ticking by and the days getting shorter, every minute counted. Those wash plants were the heart of the operation, sifting dirt to find gold. And now one was down. And if that wasn't bad enough, the super stacker, another key piece of gear, crapped out too, before they even got started. It's like the machines were staging a rebellion. The plan was simple. Lucifer and Big Red were supposed to team up, sluicing gold like champs while Parker was away. That was the only way to keep up with their weekly goals. But now, it's a total mess. Mitch is left scrambling, trying to figure out how to get these machines back online. If he can't, those targets might as well be a pipe dream. Time's running out, and the pressure's on. Let's see how Mitch pulls this one off. The team had a big idea. If they could just hoist Lucifer, their giant wash plant, onto a 30-foot-high pad, they'd be in business. Then, they'd hook it up to the super stacker, a massive 120-foot machine that could shovel pay dirt, that's the gold-rich dirt, right into Lucifer. Once Lucifer got washing, it'd spit out those shiny gold nuggets everyone's after. They'd even built the pad and hauled Lucifer up there, testing things out to make sure it'd work. So far, so good. At first, The superstacker was a total rock star. The crew watched in awe as this beast started moving pay dirt like a champ. Things were looking golden, literally. After just 2 days, gold was already piling up in the ripples, way faster than usual. "Time for a cleanup," someone shouted. It was the kind of problem you want to have. But then, disaster struck. As they lowered the superstacker, it screeched to a halt. Bam! A full-on crash. The team's jaws dropped. Alec Kelly, one of the mechanics, sprinted over to figure out what went wrong. After scrambling around the machine, he spotted the culprit: an oil leak. At first, they hoped it was no big deal, but nope, it was bad news. A blown plug in the cylinder had caused the leak, and fixing it wasn't going to be quick. Now, instead of feeding pay dirt into Lucifer and raking in gold, the crew was stuck playing mechanic. Time was ticking, and this breakdown was threatening their whole season. Alec could only shake his head. "We've got to pound out those 700 ounces from the strip and get back up that mountain. That's the best ground we've got. It's my top priority." The team's dream of hitting it big was on hold, all because of one leaky machine. Turns out, that little plug in the superstacker was a big deal. It held the hydraulic oil in place, keeping the lifting cylinder working right. Without it, total chaos. Oil was leaking everywhere, and the team knew they had to stop it fast. Alec, the mechanic, thought moving the superstacker might help. Big mistake. The top of the plug popped off, and suddenly, what was a headache turned into a full-blown disaster. Oil gushed out like a busted pipe, making the leak even worse. Mitch was done. "This isn't even funny anymore," he muttered. Picture this: oil pouring out like a scene from a horror movie, the machine grinding to a halt, and the crew scrambling. "Tatiana, shut it down! Shut the plant down!" he yelled, watching the mess unfold. It was like trying to ride a bike and crashing every time, except way more expensive. The team couldn't waste time. Every minute they spent fixing this was a minute they weren't digging for gold. Mitch raced to the scene, desperate to figure it out before Parker got back, or the week ran out. "Time's our enemy," he said. "We're always chasing every hour we can get. That's how we get those big gold hauls at the end of the season." But when he got there, Alec broke the bad news. The damage was worse than they thought. The plug was toast. Only a few threads were left clinging to the cylinder. Gold? Not happening anytime soon. Mitch wasn't giving up, though. He took a hard look at the superstacker himself, determined to find a fix. After some head-scratching, he decided they needed a new plug to bring this beast back to life. Great plan, except for one tiny problem. There wasn't a hardware store or plug shop for miles. Now what? They were stuck in the middle of nowhere, oil everywhere, and their gold dreams slipping away. Mitch was out there, hustling to keep the dirt moving through the wash plant. "If we can push more material through fast, we might just hit our 700-ounce goal," he said. "We're not down for the count yet." But then it hit him. He had a spare plug sitting in his garage at home, just collecting dust. Can you believe it? Something as tiny as a plug was holding up their whole week. With Parker away, it was up to Mitch to save the day, like he always did. Going into town wasn't an option. They couldn't risk wasting time on a wild goose chase for a plug that might not even be there. So Mitch rallied the team. "We've got to figure this out ourselves." The last thing they wanted was more trouble. "Let's be gentle with her," Mitch said, "and get this fixed." After some quick thinking, inspiration struck. What about the old rock trucks sitting around? Maybe one of them had a spare plug. Mitch and Alec dove in, searching every rusty truck they could find. But it wasn't easy. One plug was too big, the next too small. Like the trucks were playing a prank on them. Seriously? Mitch groaned. Those trucks were key to their operation, hauling dirt to the wash plant. And now they were just teasing them with useless parts. How long would this take? Every minute spent hunting for a plug was a minute not digging gold. But these guys didn't quit. Frustrated? Sure. Determined? Absolutely. They kept digging through old machines, checking every nook and cranny for a plug that could get Lucifer, their big wash plant, back in action. If Lucifer's down, we've got a feed problem or a blocked chute or something, Mitch said. We've got to keep this moving. Their grit was shining through. They weren't about to let a little plug ruin their season. Mitch wasn't giving up. He stumbled across an old drilling machine and thought, maybe this has the plug we need for the super stacker. At first, it didn't look promising. No plug in sight. But then, jackpot. They spotted one that just might do the trick. With a quick yank, they pulled it out and raced back to the super stacker, which was still sitting there, lifeless. This little plug had a big job. The team was stripping 10 feet of frozen mud just to get 1/3 of a gram of gold per yard. Not exactly a gold rush yet. If this fix worked, it could get them back on track to hit their weekly goal while Parker was off in Alaska. Mitch didn't waste a second. He plugged it in, and after some tinkering, he grinned. Alec's idea to scavenger hunt through the old trucks and machines had paid off. The new plug fit. Looks like we're back in business, Mitch said. No more letting Parker down. The crew was buzzing. If we can sluice it, we don't have to strip it, someone chimed in. I'm feeling good about this season now. High fives went around. Pure teamwork magic. With the super stacker humming again, they jumped right back to work, determined to make up for lost time. Mitch was running the show solo for the first time. And yeah, he was a little nervous. It's a big job, and Parker's trusting me to pull it off, he admitted. But with the plug fixed and the team fired up, they were ready to crush it. Hopefully, before Parker rolled back from the Indian River with news about his claim deal. Time to turn that downtime into gold time. The crew was counting on Big Red and Lucifer, their trusty wash plants, to crank out enough gold to make up for lost time. They needed to hit Parker's targets before he got back from Alaska. No pressure, right? But a few days after the super stacker fiasco, Mitch checked the clock and realized they were still lagging behind. If we're not careful, he thought, we'll be making excuses to the boss, and nobody wants that. Getting pay dirt, the gold-rich dirt, to Lucifer was no picnic. It was pricey, slow, and tough on the team. We can't slack off, even with a boss as cool as Parker, Mitch said. So, he took charge, hopping into the driver's seat of the super stacker himself. If anyone could squeeze the most out of that giant machine, it was him. His plan? Hook it up to Lucifer and sluice as much dirt as possible. That was their ticket to uncovering the gold hidden in the pay dirt. It's the Yukon, Mitch muttered. If it stops moving, it's game over. With $1 million operation on the line, he had to make it work. He carefully steered the super stacker to its spot near the 30-foot pad where Lucifer sat waiting. After some maneuvering, everything clicked into place. Mitch grinned and turned to the team. You guys crushed it! They'd faced breakdowns and setbacks head-on, and thanks to their smarts and grit, they'd come out on top. Mitch couldn't have been prouder. Now, let's get that gold and hit our season goals. With the super stacker and Lucifer teamed up, they were finally back in the game, ready to make Parker proud when he rolled back into camp. It's awesome knowing Mitch and Parker can take off, and everything still runs like clockwork, one of the crew said. We dig dirt, we find gold, That's our thing, and there's plenty more where that came from." Alec and the team couldn't hold back their excitement. They were whooping and cheering. After all the headaches, they could finally kick back and watch the Super Stacker and Lucifer team up like champs, doing the heavy lifting to sift out that sweet, sweet gold. Sure, they'd lost a ton of time wrestling with that busted plug and the oil leak disaster. "Hey, this little plug in the cylinder might be the fix," Alec had said back then. "Let's give it a shot." And thank goodness it worked, because how else were they going to prove to Parker they could handle things without him? Another meltdown like that could have been a trust buster. Now, Lucifer and the Super Stacker were in overdrive, making up for lost time. It was the price of that messy malfunction, but the crew was all in. They kept the machines humming, eyes glued to the gold piling up. To their relief, Big Red joined the party, and by week's end, no more breakdowns. Those machines worked overtime, sluicing gold like it was their job. Well, it was. "This is huge," someone shouted. "We're hitting Craigslist for our first haul of the season," Mitch said with a grin. "Just got to get it to the wash plant in one piece. It's a steep climb." The team was buzzing, ready to welcome Parker back like nothing had gone wrong. But when it came time to weigh the week's gold, you could feel the jitters. After all the chaos with the Super Stacker and wash plant, would they hit their target? Nobody wanted to find out they'd come up short after all that hustle. After weighing their gold, the team was all smiles and high fives, like they'd just had a killer week in the mines. To anyone watching, it sure looked like they'd hit their target. "Normally, we don't lose this much gravel," Mitch said, scratching his head. "We usually sluice about 2 feet of dirt, but this time it's 5 or 6. That's a lot." Still, the good vibes hinted they might have pulled it off. But then Parker's curiosity kicked in. "Hey, what's up with the Super Stacker's conveyor belt?" he asked. That opened the floodgates. Mitch knew it was time to spill the beans about what went down while Parker was gone. "No room for error out here," Mitch started. "We had a wild ride with that 120-foot beast." He explained how an oil leak from a tiny plug almost tanked their week, and how they scrambled to find a replacement, turning it into a treasure hunt across old machines. It was a mess, but they fixed it. Parker listened, nodding. You could tell it bonded the crew even more. Mitch stepped up big time, proving he could lead and solve problems when the chips were down. "I was hoping you'd have a dozer ready for me to snag for Australia Creek," Parker said with a grin. "We're gonna need the big guns to get through all that dirt." Back at the wash plants, Big Red and Lucifer were still churning away like they were on a mission. Despite the Super Stacker drama, they'd held up, though Big Red was stealing the show, outshining Lucifer. Maybe that hiccup with the conveyor slowed Lucifer down a bit. Parker stared at the gold pile, wheels turning. "I'm just wondering if that whole valley's worth mining," he mused. Whatever the weigh-in showed, the team's grit, and a little luck, kept them in the game. The big moment arrived. Time to weigh the gold. The team gathered around their trusty scale, buzzing with anticipation. To make it fun, they started a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and then poured their shiny haul onto the scale. Eyes glued to the numbers, they watched them climb higher and higher. "Whoa, look at that!" someone shouted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little nuggets. They're small, but they're adding up. When the scale finally stopped, it read 162.85 ounces. That's nearly $290,000 worth of gold, maybe more, depending on the market. Not too shabby for a week's work. And get this, that was just from Lucifer, the wash plant that had all those Super Stacker headaches. Even with the chaos, it still delivered big. Mitch deserves a shout-out here, He's the guy who got the Super Stacker and Lucifer back in the game lightning fast. "Smooth this out. Build a road. Fill in that pond," he'd barked, taking charge like a pro. Thanks to his quick thinking and Alec's knack for scavenging, they turned a potential disaster into a win. That oil leak? It could have sunk them. But Mitch's grit and know-how kept the team on track to hit their goal while Parker was away. That's what makes a top-notch foreman. Mitch isn't new to this. With over 175 episodes of Gold Rush under his belt, he's been Parker's right-hand man for years. Sure, he's not a certified mechanic, but what he lacks in fancy degrees, he makes up for with real-world smarts. He's learned everything hands-on, and it shows. "I was hoping you'd have a dozer ready for Australia Creek," Parker said when he got back. "We'll need the big guns to tackle that dirt." Mitch grinned, still proving himself. "I'm getting the hang of this excavator gig," he said. "Just gotta remember which stick does what." From dodging breakdowns to keeping the crew rolling, Mitch has shown he's not just a fixer, he's a leader. Parker's lucky to have him, and this week's haul proves it.